The U.S. Supreme Court struck down Florida's death penalty system on the grounds that judges, not juries, decide the key facts, determining whether a killer is condemned to die. In an 8-1 ruling, the justices said this judge-driven system violates a defendant's right to a jury trial. The ruling will likely give new sentencing hearings to inmates who were recently sentenced to death in Florida. But the justices in the past have said such new rulings don't apply automatically to old cases. Let's go behind the headlines on the ruling tendered by the nation's highest court. Constitutional law expert Eric Friday joins us back here on the morning show. Good to have you here.
Good to see you again.
Now, this is significant because Florida has something like 400 prisoners on death row, and essentially right now, we don't have a death penalty.
As of right now, the court has said our statute and the procedure that we use in this state, based on our statute, is unconstitutional and can no longer be used.
Do we have a flood of attorneys representing these death row inmates who now go and say, well,
in most cases, they're going to be represented by post-conviction counsel. It's generally going to be somebody that's been appointed at state expense, because in most cases, death row inmates don't have the means to hire private counsel. So it's going to be mainly appointed counsel.
Let's take a look at the decisions themselves. This is what Justice Sonia Sotomayor wrote. She wrote, "The Sixth Amendment requires a jury, not a judge, to find each fact necessary to impose a sentence of death. A jury's mere recommendation is not enough." And the fact of the matter is, this type of system is fairly unique to Florida. The State Attorney General Pam Bondi said she wants to fix things and fix things quickly. Legislature's in session right now. Can she get something done?
Yeah, the legislature can suspend the rules to allow late-filed bills in certain circumstances, and I think this is certainly a circumstance where they will do that. Florida traditionally has been very strong on the death penalty, and I think the legislature is going to move very quickly to try and correct this statute. The question is will the correction apply to anything that happens from today until the correction is put in place?
And when the correction's put in place, does that host a whole new round of appeals?
Well, yeah, it's going to be a whole new issue. Now, the legislature will try and write something that's consistent with what the court's already ruled in these series of cases from various states. But yeah, I think it's going to mean a whole new set of appeals at that point, too.
Now, we heard that the vote was 8-1. This was the one dissent. It came from Justice Samuel Alito. He contends the Supreme Court rulings allow judges to establish the facts leading to a death sentence. Even so, he said, under the Florida system, the jury plays a critically important role. What's he saying there?
Well, in Florida, we had a system where the jury had to find, based on factors that they were given, they had to find that death was appropriate, and then the judge was a safety valve, to some extent, to decide whether or not the jury was correct. But in this case, the court's saying the jury has to find the exact aggravating factors that support a finding or recommendation of death.
Was Florida's contention essentially, when it comes to the death penalty, if you put this in the hands of a jury, there may be some emotion that comes into play. If you put it in the hands of a judge, it's just the law and no emotion factored in.
That was somewhat Florida's argument. However, the court said that allowing the judge to potentially find different aggravating factors than the jury violated the defendant's rights to a jury trial.
This won't affect other states, but it is a setback for proponents of capital punishment, no doubt.
Well, I think we've had a lot of setbacks, not the least of which is the number of exonerations we've had of late. I mean, I think we had something like 125 exonerations just in the past year of death row inmates. So we've definitely got some questions that have been raised on capital punishment, and I think we're going to continue to see this fight for a long time.
And what do you think about the case of Hurst versus Florida? Is there anything specific about that case that seems unique to you?
Nothing seems unique about it. I mean, it was a particularly brutal crime. It involved a significant amount of anger in terms of the numbers of stabbings that this victim suffered.
Right. He basically worked at a Popeye's Chicken and stabbed his manager over and over and over again.
And I think generally the courts try to, these cases are generally ones where the courts try to come up with a reason not to overturn the sentence. He is not out of the woods yet, because the Florida courts still have to decide whether the error was harmless or not. And that's going to be the big factor in all the other cases that are going to come forward is, was the error harmless, or did it cause harm to the defendant? Would they have been sentenced to that anyway, no matter what the standard?
Eric Friday, thank you very much. Appreciate your perspective.